Adam being a new Noah. I'm going to go on to the next slide here. So, because Noah was called to refound God's covenant family like a new Adam, it's really not surprising that there are parallels between Noah and Adam, just like there were between the flood and creation. So like Adam, Noah is told to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Like Adam, Noah is given dominion over the creatures of the earth. And both Adam and Noah were given a garden to inhabit. And both Adam and Noah consumed fruit that exposed nakedness. So again, many parallels here. But unfortunately, also like Adam, Noah's family divides into two camps. One that's committed to righteousness, and then the other that's committed to wickedness. So let's take a look at that family. So we're going to take a look at the table of nations here. And in Genesis 10, we have Noah's genealogy, which is really identified by 70 descendants who found the nations of the world. This document is absolutely unique. There's no other ancient document that portrays the entire human race as one worldwide family. And besides revealing Noah's descendants, what this document does is also reveal God's fatherly perspective on the whole world. Again, it's all about family. It shows us what he sees, that the original unity of the human family, both in Adam and Noah, as well as the pattern of the human sin and divine judgment. This table of nations also serves one additional purpose. It helps the people of God, those descended through the righteous of Noah's son Shem, to understand their place in the world. It shows them that they are the bearers of God's blessings to the human race. All right, so how does it do that? Well, as we just mentioned, both the righteous line and the wicked line descended from Noah. The righteous line comes forth through Noah's firstborn son Shem. It's also through Shem's descendants that God continues to build his covenant family. Now, ancient Israel traces their national origins back to Noah through Shem, and his descendants are called Shemites or Semites. And today, when we say somebody is anti-Jewish, we call them anti-Semite. Reason for that. So now Shem became great-grandfather of Eber, and from whose name we also get the word Hebrew. And it's the children of Eber, the Hebrews, that are then the ancestors of the Israelites and then of Jesus of Nazareth. So again, all coming back to family. So just as there is a righteous line to Noah's descendants, there's also a wicked line to the descendants of Ham, Noah's son who betrayed his father after the flood proceeded. All of ancient Israel's enemies come from Ham's line. That includes the Egyptians, the Canaanites, the Philistines, the Syrians, and the Babylonians. As Dr. Hahn sums up, in A Father Who Keeps His Promise, Israel was enslaved by Egypt, ensnared by the Canaan, oppressed by the Philistines, annihilated by Assyria, and exiled by Babylon. So the conflict between those children of Ham and the children of Shem really becomes evident in the story of the Tower of Babel, and there's where Noah's descendants really bring judgment on themselves, much as Adam and Eve, all descendants through generations beforehand. It just seems like we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Well, at Babel, Ham's descendants begin constructing a great tower, one that will establish their name, their Shem, and bring them fame and glory. They do this in direct opposition to Shem's descendants, who on the other hand seek to advance the Lord's glory and name and not their own. The tower they built was a taken temple. In other words, they were worshiping idols. And we often think of idol worship literally as worshiping a physical idol. But when we worship idols, what we're also speaking to is worshiping things that are not of God. So worshiping wealth and pleasure and power, those are all idols. And we're not worshiping God. So the Catechism tells us that through this perversion of paganism, an ungodly world was united only in its perverse ambition to forge its own unity at Babel. It also tells us that the people were committed the sins of polytheism and the idolatry of the nations and its rulers. So to stop men from worshiping idols, and to bring them back into his plan and into salvation history, God renders judgment again. Keep doing the same mistakes over and over again. Well, what God chooses to do is he confuses the builder's language so they don't understand each other anymore, and then he scatters his wayward children across the entire earth. So now for a third time in salvation history, just 11 chapters within the Bible, men have strayed en masse from God's plan. And for a third time, God has taken drastic measures to get the humanity back on track, back into that covenant relationship with him. He is our Father, and he loves us, and he wants what's best for us, and he keeps trying to get us back on track. And ultimately, getting people back on track is what God's goal is. God's covenant with Noah was far-reaching. It didn't just affect one man and his family, it also affected their descendants. So that's why even after Noah's descendants relapse into sin and are scattered to the four corners of the earth, God still continues to extend his providential care to the nations. The Catechism tells us, the covenant with Noah remains in full force during the times of the Gentiles until the universal proclamation of the gospel. So God's covenant with Noah, of course, did more than just remain in force until the coming of Christ. Like God's first covenant with creation, it also foreshadowed the everlasting covenant of Jesus Christ. First and foremost, the covenant with Noah points us to the sacrament of baptism. If I could ask whoever has the scripture verse for 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 20 to 21, please stand up.
They had disobeyed as long ago as Noah's day, while God patiently waited until the ark was built. At that time, a few persons, 8 in all, escaped from the ark through the water. You are now saved by a baptismal bath, which corresponds to this exactly. This baptism is no removal of physical sin, but the pledge to God of an irreproachable conscience through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We went to
All right, so what's St. Peter telling us? He's telling us that the flood is a type of baptism. And like the flood, that baptism, it cleanses us and it destroys sin. And just as a kind of new creation was born out of the flood waters, the waters of baptism help each of us become new creations in Christ. It's also important to know, however, that the passage in 1 Peter tells us with a warning. Noah's son Ham was saved on the ark, but he later squandered that gift of salvation, betraying his father through sin and ending his days cursed rather than blessed. And likewise, our baptismal grace alone doesn't assure us eternal life and blessing. We still have the gift of free will, so it is ultimately our choice, and we are responsible for the choices that we make. Despite the graces that we are offered, we have that gift of free will. It's ultimately that freedom to make those choices. So what that means is that we have to continue to cooperate with God's plan if we really want our days to end with blessing and not a curse. So the last thing that we're going to cover this evening in this lesson is something we mentioned at the onset, and that is the literary framework of Genesis chapters 1 through 11. And this is really important because the structure of the first 11 chapters shows us a relationship between Adam and Eve, Noah, Abraham, and the rest of salvation history. And what this literary framework reveals is that salvation history is shaped by the spiritual conflict between the godly and the ungodly. Righteousness and wickedness travel down through family lines, and God vindicates his family and judges those who corrupt his children. All right, so how does Genesis chapters 1 through 11 show us all of that? Well, from Adam and Noah, there are 10 generations. The wicked of the world trace their lineage back through Cain, and at the end of the 10th generation, God sends judgment on the world in the form of the flood. Once the flood recedes, 4 men remain. It's Noah and his 3 sons, Shem, Japheth, and Ham. Of those 3, Shem receives the blessing of the firstborn. And just as there were 10 generations from Adam to Noah, there are also 10 generations from Noah to Terah. The wicked of the world trace their lineage back to Ham through his son Canaan, on the other hand. And at the end of these 10 generations, God sends judgment on the Tower of Babel. So at the time of the judgment of Babel, Noah's descendant Terah has 3 sons, Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Abram is the son that receives the blessing from God. Okay, so it appears to be very complicated, but it all is aligned, and there are very many parallels, and it's all building. All right, to see the structure, you really have to carefully make your way through the various genealogies that fill the early pages of Genesis. Genealogies that are first conceived, overcomplicated, overburdensome, and superfluous. But there really is a point to these genealogies, and if you take a closer look at them, what they do is they reveal an artistry of the author of Genesis. The various stories of Genesis are connected through the use of the word generation. And Genesis 2:4 introduces the history of the human family by saying, there are generations of the heavens and the earth. The same term advances through the lines of Noah, the patriarchs. This is the book of the generations of Adam. And again, these are the generations of Noah. So the term generation, also known as Toldot, is actually used 10 times in the book of Genesis to introduce key figures in salvation history, revealing a narrative plot in the history of God's family. This really uses points to deliberative literary framework designed to show us the history from God's perspective. And the focus of God's perspective is not wars, it's not economics, it's not politics, it all comes back to family. And we spoke about the Bible being a story of God's family. It's all about family. And the literature structure of Genesis 1 through 11 tells us that about God's family. How did he make that family? How does the family stray? How is the family corrected? How does it slowly grow in understanding of God's ways and grow in relationship to him? So to recap over the past 2 lessons, we looked at the beginning of the conflict in the human family. And how many people have conflict in families? It seems like that has not gone away. It all started at the beginning of the time, and it all has continued. The conflicts continue. But we hope to learn so that the conflicts just will not be there. But with that said, the 2 seeds out of the serpent, we have the 2 seeds, that of the serpent and that of the woman. We've seen it between the 2 sons of Adam and Eve. We've seen that in Cain and Abel. And we've seen it between the lines of the righteous and the unrighteous. These conflicts have continued throughout time and were summed up by St. Augustine as a conflict between the city of God and the city of man. Now, the city of God is based upon the love of God, even to the point of the contempt of self, while the city of man is based on the love of self, even to the point of contempt of God. So in Genesis, where it's read in that light, what really does become clear is that it's not only just telling us about the origins of the family, it's giving us a blueprint to humanity's future. And when you see the origins of the human family, it also helps us to see ourselves and to see our struggles in the lights of the great struggle of human history. And really, in a sense, it places today's culture wars in context, meaning the culture wars that we've seen throughout history. We can really understand, what the beginnings of them were and why they may have evolved. But really, the more that things change, you really see that things have remained the same as well.
Very good.
Yeah, so we're good.
All right, guys. So, thank you very much. I'm going to lead us through the discussion a little bit, but before we do that, we are going to do some singing. So, in the middle of your tables, please pick up one of those sheets. Which one are we going to do, Steve? Your grace is enough. Okay? Why don't we all stand up, stretch it out, stand up. Remember what we sang is twice the prayer? When we sing is twice the prayer. So, is everybody good? Everybody have a sheet? If you cannot sing, just read it out loud. That's okay. Just join us as part of this, please.
Lead us by still waters into mercy.
our discussion groups again. And if I could ask you to please take a look again at page 40 in your workbooks and spend a little bit of time going over the questions for review, number 4. And then your questions for discussion, questions 3 through 5. Again, questions for review, number 4. And questions for discussion, 3 through 5. We'll take about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll wrap up and prepare for the evening.
I'm gonna put on her mic. Her mic is still on, right? The sticky notes? What are they called? Post-notes? You have some of that?
Nervous medicine.
You guys cards. You think it'd be okay?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You think it'd be okay?
So how long have you been doing sound? Here, I've been now for right at 4 years. No, the old analog console, no, they're not. You have to look at it just as an individual. Instead of vertically, you think of it horizontally. Okay. Each one of these channels is just an input. You have an EQ line, one of the auxiliaries that allow you to put the sound other places inside just a you can do, I mean, there's a ton of places. You have auxiliaries for that for me. Lately I've been having an affinity with sound. I don't know what you call this. Yeah. You know, like honestly, the most difficult part about writing sound is just to have a good ear for tone. Yeah. Then you're going. Because everything else is just technical. So if you can hear frequencies and like